In the time available to us, I would like to discuss the effects of British foreign policy, which some people identify as a big problem and a big fomenter of problems. Salma Yaqub, are you proud to be British?
Yes, I am.
Right, there we are. There was an incident recently which was quite controversial. We spoke about it on the radio and you did lots of interviews about it. It was a right old row, in fact, wasn't it? You were at Birmingham City Council, and Lance Corporal Matt Croucher, who had won a George Cross for throwing himself on top of a Taliban grenade in Helmand Province, and he saved a number of lives when he did that. He made an appearance, and most people there gave him a standing ovation. You didn't. You stayed sitting, and you didn't clap, and that annoyed a lot of people.
I can understand how that could have been taken in that way. Do I think Matt Croucher is a hero for putting his own life in danger to save the lives of his comrades? Yes, I do. No hesitation. What I hesitated doing was standing side by side with those same politicians who thought they were being brilliantly patriotic simply by clapping, but refused in our council chamber to have any debate on Afghanistan, sending these poor men and women who are doing their duty, because soldiers don't get that choice. I've never ever been against the military or our serving men and women, but I am against politicians who don't have the guts to even question their own party leaders. Every party, mainstream party in this country, is supporting more war in Afghanistan, which is causing misery. And our soldiers, I think, are being sent on an ill-conceived mission. So shall I stand and applaud those people? That makes me a hypocrite. Because at that point, as a political chamber, in a political debating forum, I did not want to ally myself with politicians. If by doing that, there was any hint or perception that it was somehow directed at soldiers individually, then certainly I would want to make it very, very clear.
Did she make a mistake?
She did make a mistake because she made a mistake because I respect her views completely on that, and I know her. She means what she says. But the problem was she deliberately, by not honouring him, whom she admits was a hero, and doing it very publicly, she stored up trouble for Muslims in this country. And she is smart enough and savvy enough to know that that was, I hope you realise, a mistake. Because nobody outside Birmingham City Council cares a fig about what goes on in the council. What they care about is overall, and they see a Muslim woman refusing to honour a British soldier's death.
Salma, can I suggest that, your point you've just made is a perfectly valid point. It could have perhaps been demonstrated in a different way.
I can agree with that.
Because, because what happened as a result is exactly what was just said now, that the impression was then created by an anti-Muslim hungry certain element of the press that Muslims don't honour British soldiers. So I think that I oppose, the invasion of Iraq. I've always opposed it. I still oppose it, for the record. But I think that I wouldn't, in this particular sensitive situation, I wouldn't want to give the impression that Muslims have a problem with British soldiers, because that's the Anjem Choudary type of,
I have 3 sons. So, would I be proud if they were to defend this country? Yes, I would.
But you don't think that is defending this country, though, do you?
But do I feel that there is this silence? Because in a way we cloak ourselves. Yes, there is a silence. There's no real debate, because it becomes what politicians.
Yes, there is endless debate all over this country.
If I can finish, please. Because what the politicians are doing actually is using more and more of our public space to say yes, we should salute our serving men and women, which is right, but they use that as an excuse to silence any genuine criticism or dissent, because it becomes disloyal. I don't want to get hung up on whether what I did in terms of tactics was it right or wrong. I can completely understand, how it was taken.
You can understand the row,
But the substantive point is this: why do we have this silence when the consequences of that are so grave?
But I wish you'd done it in another way. I wish you'd done it because there are Muslims out there who do want to kill.
But let's talk about the wider issue, which is actually, is it not a no-brainer if we, as part of some alliance, go bombing Muslim countries, some Muslims in this angry, some of whom are young and hot-headed, will be angry?
I think it's
what do you think, David Slewin?
Well, I think we have to start by defining the terms of the trade of the debate in the first instance. I just want to come back to Salma.
Let's talk about foreign policy.
If I may. I want to talk about Salma, but I want to talk about the terms of trade and foreign policy as put, and I want to talk about some of the things that Salma said. Salma comes from the Respect Party. The Respect Party is not like the Conservatives or the Labour Party, in the sense that it is a coalition that is comprised of what are radical Muslims and radical communists, forgive me.
That's just not true. That's just a
Forgive me, you will let me finish. Forgive me. The gentleman who Salma works for example, is on the record as saying that 7/7 and 9/11 might not have been done by Muslims. Now that's
who do I work
unacceptable.
for?
Now,
Who's
forgive
that?
me,
Who says that?
Dr. Naseem. Dr.
I
Naseem.
don't
From the
work
Birmingham
for
Central
Again,
Mosque.
it's
Correct.
simply
You work very closely with him.
I do
now,
not work
forgive
for
me, you
Dr.
will let me
No,
finish.
She says she does not work with him.
To draw the
we know
argument.
what he says, and he's right on the fringes, but
Dr.
Salma says she doesn't
Naseem
work with
is
him.
on the National Council of the Respect Party. And
No, he's not.
Dr. Naseem, well, then he was,
So
he might not be
please,
anymore. But Dr.
it doesn't help when you
has
just have a complete
has given
false
majority funding to many of the Respect Party campaigns. But let me just go on to the main point. The main point is the following. You then, after defending him, attempted to, and this will lead us to where these terms,
Hang on, what did I
terms of the
defend?
debate have to be. After the September 11 and September 7, and 7/7 comments, you attempted to defend him by saying that, well, we don't really trust what our politicians say, and so, you know, it is not clear to us what we hear about Iraq and so on and so forth, and then attempted
Can
to
I
drag,
put the
as
record
you do,
straight? These are very serious
as you do
allegations.
continuously up and down this country, this debate onto a plateau whereby you paint a picture of a Western imperialistic policy that is drawing in response the kinds of things that 9/11 are. I think you are actually on the record as having said that 7/7 was something of a reprisal in a way. This is unacceptable.
You can't
What
say, I
happened-
think somebody is on the record. You've got to come on with, you know, I think really, Salma Yaqub needs a right of reply, and I'd like to hear that now.
I have, from day one, unequivocally, unhesitatingly, with my words, with my actions, condemned terrorism, extremism, whether it's done in the name of religion or politics. After 9/11, I went to New York. Not because I'm guilty of that terrible crime, but simply because I understand that many people are now connecting Muslims with that to meet the victims of 9/11. After 7/7 happened, I helped organise thousands of people straight away in the Birmingham City Centre to say, not in our name, because I felt it was important. A visible presence, a visible message went out that we are united as a community against terrorism with the rest of the British population.
We haven't got long left, so...
Do I have a political stance
Salma Yaqub.
that our government's actions are increasing terrorism, making us less safe?
Right.
I agree with the ex-MI5 boss who, in the Chilcot inquiry last year, said our invasions of Iraq have increased the threat to this country of
Salim
terrorism.
Shaital, no, over here, let's explore that. Salim, 7/7. What made them do it?
Basically, the problem is this, that...
7/7.
Yes,
What made them do it?
What made them do it was that there was an understanding that they felt that they bought into the Al-Qaeda philosophy, which is completely wrong and rejected by all mainstream Muslims, that you can export a call for jihad, which was in Afghanistan and Iraq, and export it to a country where the scholars unanimously have said there is no jihad in this country. That is fundamentally the mistake that they've made, and as a result, they have committed, again, they're doing it in what they see as a response for British foreign policy.
So the problem is identification with Muslims in another part of the world rather than with fellow Brits?
No, it's not that. No, because as Muslims, we are
no, as perverted form of
sorry,
vengeance.
can I just
They use that
clarify the
logic.
point?
Sorry.
Can I just make the point? The point is that no, the point is that of course as Muslims we will identify with people who have the same ideology and creed with us, but at the same time this does not allow, and that same ideology and creed, Islam, does not allow singular acts of war in country just wantonly, which is what they did.
Actually on the specific point of 7/7, they bought into an extremist ideology, and part of that extremist ideology justifies killing civilians in the name of foreign policy. Now, there's nothing that can justify that, and there's a separate discussion to be had about the mistakes of foreign policy, and there are many mistakes in foreign policy, and it is linked. But what I'm saying is that regardless of the mistakes in foreign policy, nothing justifies killing civilians. We have to have both discussions. We have to recognize there have been been mistakes in foreign policy, but the means to correct those mistakes must come through the systems. Now, I just want to make one final
Have
point
those
on this.
no, but this is key, I think. Have those foreign policy decisions made us in this country less safe?
I think that yes, there are inevitably ramifications of our foreign policy, but it's not a justification, and we have to be very precise how we say these things. There are implications, but it's not a justification. Now, I don't see any reason why, as a Muslim, I should be, on this final point that Salim just made, I don't see any reason why I should be any more sympathetic to the sufferings of Muslims in Iraq than to the sufferings of non-Muslims in, say, Ethiopia or any other country. They're all human beings. And so, I just want to say that final comment is part of the problem we're dealing with.
Is that the problem? He said
part of the problem.
Part of the problem, yeah.
As Muslims, we should care for human beings and not just react when other Muslims are attacked.
I agree with that.
So, but in which case, please be more precise when you speak, because it gives the impression we're only concerned about other Muslims, and that's a problem, because other people do have that impression.
I think you were
Under the Wahhabi Salafi narrative, the word jihad has been totally distorted and maligned. The word jihad appears. It had been distorted and maligned. And we import this narrative from abroad, and we think, listen, this is the version of Islam. We need to create an indigenous Islam. You know, we need to create an Islam as naturalized. It belongs here, not belongs over there.
British Islam. What would an Islamic, Miriam, what would an Islamic, I mean, let's stress the positive points. What would an Islamic Britain look like?
Well, I think a lot of Muslims that I speak to don't see it very different to what it looks like today. I mean, Muhammad Abdu, who's a Muslim scholar writing in the 20th century, said Europe is Islam without Islam, by which he meant that when he came to Europe, he felt that he saw in Europe Islamic values. He also, incidentally, said, I went back to the East and saw Muslims but no Islam. So it's very interesting that in terms of the substantive values that are at the core of European society, Muslims do recognize those as very Islamic, and I think that that's a very important point to be made. I just wanted to come back to the point about
a lot of time. I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to move on because time's eluding us.
If I can say something, maybe it's controversial.
Whoa, go on then. You've tempted me.
Bin Laden and Blair had far more in common with each other than their divisions. They all justified a vengeance mentality that innocent people are collateral damage because they had and justified it.
The fundamental point why I say that it is the kinds of people like Salma who go up and down this country and talk about foreign policy under those terms. The terms of foreign policy are very simple. No party, no minority gets to come to the foreign policy debate with a bomb. In any way, shape or form...
And by my saying that, I'm saying none of them should have used bombs.
To in any way, shape or form suggest that the terms of trade in this debate begin with saying, well, if you do that or if you do that and so on and so forth, you will be bombed in the streets of your
That's
city.
what Bush and Blair and Bin Laden said.
It is not acceptable. And that is the kind of thing that you do up and down this country, saying to people in rooms filled to the brim that we can understand why these things are happening because of Western action.
Non-Muslims and Muslims are united in that.
Even Majid, for whom I must say that I share a lot of his views, he sent a letter, or was a co-signatory of a letter, to Prime Minister Brown at the time of Israel's war with Hamas, saying, essentially alluding to the fact that if these kinds of things go on, we can't guarantee security.
Thank you all so much for taking part. Thank you very much. Applaud yourselves. All the debates continue next.